to order at 6:03.
Pim, if you wouldn't mind, could I read a statement on your behalf?
Please go ahead.
All right. So Pim, as chair of this meeting, has determined that given the potential health issues associated with the COVID-19 pandemic, the governor's declared state of emergency in New Hampshire due to COVID-19, and the public health authority's recommendations for social distancing, quarantine, and self-isolation, this meeting constitutes an emergency pursuant to RSA 91A2, subsection 3B, in that, quote, immediate action is imperative and the physical presence of a quorum is not reasonably practical, end quote. And the organization needs to conduct its regular meeting to continue to move the business of the organization forward during this pandemic. As a result, members of the public body may participate by phone and a quorum need not be present. Any actions taken must be by roll call vote. And for the record, this meeting has been properly noticed for more than 24 hours.
Hey,
There's Pim.
Oh, there we are.
got some help, huh?
Yeah, I got somebody to steal for it. Oh, now I got both. Let me get rid of it.
You need to unmute, Pim. Top right, or top right, yeah.
It's okay. I wasn't talking. I was just trying to get my audio right.
Okay.
And then for the purposes of this meeting, we'll need to go into non-public right at 7 p.m. That's a hard stop. And then the non-public will need to end at 7:30 promptly to start the SAU meeting. So besides that, we're good to go to start going through the agenda, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, great. So I will, once we get back into a regular session where we are all present in one room, I'd like to get back to the Pledge of Allegiance. Obviously, we'll skip that for now. I was thinking of perhaps doing something like a moment of silence, but based on our time issue, we'll skip that. So I guess we'll go right to the superintendent's report.
Thank you. I'm going to save a majority of my information, my superintendent's report, for the SAU meeting. The things that I will point out here that are of particular interest to the Souhegan School Board related to our current crisis that we're engaged with. Bill and I will be meeting with seniors on Wednesday to discuss end of year things specific to seniors. As you know, things like high school graduation and your senior prom happen once in a lifetime, and they are of vital importance to our high school seniors. And so we're taking particular interest in them to make sure that those things, we find a way to make those things happen, if at all humanly possible. Outside of that, I have nothing else germane to the Souhegan board that I won't be discussing during the SAU board meeting.
Okay, great. Thanks. Anybody have questions at this point? Seeing none. Move on to the principal's report. Bill?
Okay, Adam, is there any way for you to allow me to share screen so I can just put up some bullets?
Yep, done.
Okay, let me see if I can do this. Tricky if I can find it. Let's, desktop, where is that document that I wanted to share with you? That's my way. I don't want that. I want to, well, I'm not seeing the document that I need here. It's in my shared drive, but I don't need it. I just thought it'd be easy to follow along. So basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to report on the schedule design process and where we are in that process with the board. Let me begin by saying that all staff had the opportunity to participate in the process, including a survey that we did initially to drive what were the priorities that we needed to look at when we talked about a schedule redesign. From that survey, we held 5 different meetings where the entire staff was involved, was asked to be involved. From that, and the priorities in the survey, we came up with a proposal which basically met the priorities that were identified by the staff, and that wound up being something very similar to what's in place right now, with the exception of a couple of things. One of them was, the schedule is an alternating black and gold schedule. So it's pretty much a similar schedule that we have now, but with the removal of the white day that we typically have in play this year, and also taking block 6, which is what's known as a skinny block. It's half the length of time of a double block, and moving it to the end of the day. What were some of the considerations in that process? Obviously, the goal is to meet the needs of the users, and also the objectives of the organization. Also, considerations that you have to always understand that any schedule that has limitations, as does this one that we're proposing. What were the benefits of this schedule design? Well, simplicity was one of the things we were looking for. So going to the black and gold schedule offered us a simplicity with respect to being able to place courses within a tighter framework. Manageability, both manageability and consistency for both teachers and students. I can talk a little bit about this if you want. Going to this schedule, fewer constraints when designing the master schedule was one of the reasons why we feel this was a benefit to go into this model. Going to the alternating block over a straight 7 or 8 period day offered the manageability of workload and opportunity for greater depth of experience for both teachers and students. So in comparison to a 7 period day, that's why we decided to stay with this alternating block. Predictability, having a gold and black day that you can predict rather than a 3-day rotation of schedules. And when the schedule gets interrupted by a cancellation or some kind of thing, it's more predictable in terms of what the next class might be, what the next assignments are going to be, and again, predictability. The schedule is more easily balanced in terms of the days within the semester. So thinking about, at the end of a semester, you want to try to have a balance in terms of the number of classes that each student has. And so when you have a 3-day rotation, a little bit more challenging to get those to be balanced. And so the black gold schedule provides a little bit better balance. With the elimination of the white day, it allowed for greater consistency in lesson development and more consistency in the student experience. And I can talk about that a little bit if you'd like. We also developed this schedule as in consideration of a transition to a late start day by wrapping the framework of the schedule around, in terms of block, and moving the period 6 day to the end. It has the potential to transition into more easily into a later start day. Again, with all of the with any schedule, every schedule has constraints. There are other constraints that play into our ability to meet some of the goals that we had around this schedule. Greater access to courses for kids being one of those. Things like teams, things like student requests, teacher certifications, all of those kinds of things play into constraints in the schedule development. So what we were looking for was really to try to provide the most simple schedule in order to lessen the number of constraints available. The survey data, just to go to what teachers prioritize, one, in priority order, common planning was one of the things that was the backbone of our schedule. As you know, our teachers collaborate, and they collaborate a great deal, and common planning is the backbone of what we do at Souhegan High School. Long instructional blocks was another big priority for the staff, wanting to maintain those long instructional blocks. Those 100-minute instructional blocks was key. Flex time, looking at flex time, and while we were not able to accomplish that in this rotation or in this step in the schedule, Flex time is something that teachers are looking for the schedule to be able to move toward. And then consistency. And consistency, when you go through the data on the survey, consistency reference basically the difference between a class taught in a white period of 49 minutes and a class taught in a 100-minute period. And if I'm a teacher that is teaching core math 1, and I teach it during a long block, and I teach it during period 6 now, those are 2 different lessons that I'm teaching, and they can be 2 different experiences for kids. And so that was a concern that was brought up by teachers, is that block 6 in that way, that white day, not block 6, that white day had an impact on the way they designed lessons and the experiences that kids had. And then another big question that was asked was around, what schedules would you like to see implemented that you think would work for the needs of students at Souhegan and for teachers? The greatest response to that was the black gold schedule with the skinny block, which is what we've designed. And the second one was a straight black and gold schedule without a skinny block. Those were the 2 most identified schedules that teachers would like to see us go to. I'll find a way, I'll dig it out as we go here and share. I do have a model of what the schedule looks like, but it's pretty much basically our schedule, taking block 6, putting it at the end of the day, potentially in anticipation of flex time in the future for a later start schedule, maybe using it in that regard, and keeping the rest of the time as a black and gold schedule with the elimination of the white day. So that's where we are now. It's gone before the Community Council Executive Board, and tomorrow it goes before the full Community Council at 2:30.
Great. Thanks, Bill. Anybody have any questions for Bill? Dave, and then Laura.
So what is Bill, when do the buses come in the afternoon to pick up the kids? Do they come after the swap of 6th period, or do they come after 9th period?
They come after the last block of the day right now, which is at what, 2:20, Kelly? They usually start showing up 2:25. I'm sorry, which?
2:23.
Yeah, 2:23.
Does that, I don't understand where the 9th period comes in. That's after that, though?
There is no 9th period.
Well, when is the period that they use for extracurriculars and clubs and meetings and stuff like that?
That's the space of time once school ends until basically when practice starts, which is, you can't start practices until 3 o'clock. And so that space of time is available prior to any formal practices or activities starting, so that kids can access teachers. But buses are on site and students start loading right after the last period of the day, which is at 2:23.
Which is after the 8th period.
Which is after, in our schedule, like basically it'd be like the 4th period of the day. Because we do, basically it's 4 periods a day, Dave. It's three double blocks plus a skinny block.
Okay. Laura?
I'm still confused about that. I just wanted to understand if the last period of the day, what I was called 9th period, which ends at 3 o'clock. So the buses leave at 2:23, correct?
Yes, the buses are taking kids
So they
out.
don't include that as a period of the day.
No, we don't.
Okay, I got it.
Okay. Now, Laura.
Which type of classes do you see coming into block 6?
Well, it's the last block. So again, we're looking at electives there, and one of the reasons I think as folks talked about it, one of the things that helped, I think, to open up the schedule a little bit is with that block in the middle of the day, it really tied our hands in some ways, especially for upperclassmen, for example. You couldn't put a class with a lab in there, right? Because you need that extended time. And so, as an example, by moving it to the end of the day and putting electives in there that can run all year, or courses that don't have labs there, that frees up, that gives us 3 solid blocks, a framework that's blocked together to be able for, especially for our upperclassmen, to be able to, not maybe if they don't take an elective in that last period of the day, to be able to leave, go to work, or do those kinds of things. Presently, they're bound because we have to use that last block of the day to schedule some science labs and those kinds of things there, which hold those upperclassmen in. And it's really our upperclassmen that are looking at that end of the day. It's like, how do I use that? How do leave school early, get to work, do those kinds of things.
Okay, great. That sounds terrific. Can you explain the flex time? And did you have any students, how many students did you have involved in the discussion on schedules?
So I'll start with the flex time. The flex time is think about our remote schedule right now. Our remote schedule right now has Wednesday, what we call flex time. And that's an opportunity for students to use time as they need and to communicate with their teachers. And so one of the things that teachers said was, we'd like to see flex time built into the schedule in some way. And so as we think about a transition to maybe even a later start, the idea of having that last block at whatever time that is, be that flex time. This kind of sets us up with that mindset of having that at the end of the day. There's a lot of benefit to that. Some of our students that have supports at the end of the day, it's a great opportunity to check in with those teachers that provide those supports and say, okay, are you, do you have the things you need? Are you ready to go? Are you ready to, are you ready to go home with homework? Are you all set up? It's a great opportunity for those kinds of things to occur at the end of the day. And so we've tried to make it at least an initial step and put the time there. There is no flex time built into this schedule for next year. That's actually a period that's going to have courses in it for next year.
Okay.
Right, and so with respect to students, I did through Joanne and Tony asked to invite any community council members that wanted to participate. And unfortunately, schedules didn't seem to jive with that, and so there was no other student involvement in that. I've taken it to the executive board. They've seen the proposal, and I'm going to the council tomorrow.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions from anybody? Amy?
Yeah, not a maybe a question and a comment. So I am really pleased to see that you have the electives at the end of the day, because that's always been an ongoing concern with students who leave for away games and miss that same class at the end of the day, and especially upperclassmen who are taking advanced placement or their capstone courses. So thank you. I think that's a welcome improvement. So will you be able to send us something visual? That was a great explanation. I'm a visual learner, so it'll be helpful if I could have something that I can take a look at.
I actually put this whole proposal together for tonight, and
Okay.
I will find it before we're done, and I will get it to you.
Great, thank you, appreciate it.
Awesome. Is that something perhaps you could put on Trello, or is there something that you would email?
I can do it I think I can do it any way you'd like.
Okay. Adam, I think probably putting it on Trello would be beneficial.
Indeed.
Okay.
How about incorporating it as part of the minutes?
We can do that as well.
I think that's really a place where it should go.
Mm-hmm. I agree. Okay. Anybody else with any questions, comments? No, seeing none.
Yeah, one more, sorry. So I know you're taking it to community council tomorrow. What is the formal process for having this approved?
So by offering it through the staff, the opportunity for every staff member to participate, I believe that I've gotten enough staff input on this we did have one meeting there were about 20 staff members that did make it to one meeting right toward the end of this process, in which we put together this roughed out black gold schedule. So with respect to that, I think the staff had ample opportunity to be part of that process. The next step really is for community council to give its blessing, and then we move forward with it. We put it into, it has to, we need to get this completed, because the master schedule design and going into Power School right now, it's critical that we have the schedule in order to finish the Power School work that we need to do. That's the new SIS system that we're using for scheduling for next year.
Thank you.
Okay, anybody else? No? All right. Adam, have you seen anything from any public that wishes to say anything at this point?
There's been a couple of questions, and I think most of them have been answered live already. One maybe that hasn't is, what happens if community council votes it down?
Okay.
Well, we need to look at what the feedback was with respect to the design, and then proceed from there.
Okay, so the answer there is we'll see after. It's tomorrow you're meeting with community council, correct?
Right, and they do have their process. And Delane, I know that it may not be like, we're not going to have necessarily an answer tomorrow, from what I understand in terms of the process. We may be coming back at another opportunity the following week and picking it up at that point in time. I think that's correct. Am I right, Delaney?
Yes, we have to have at least 2 meetings discussing the proposal before we can motion to vote. So we won't know for at least 2 weeks, including this week. So tomorrow we'll start the discussion, and then we can discuss it again the meeting after. And we could vote at that meeting if we have reached the end of the speakers list, kind of thing.
Go ahead, Laura.
Sorry. Have you done a scenario of a dry run of students have already put in what classes they'd like to take? Did you do a dry run of how this schedule will fit into the teachers' schedules and the students' desires to take?
The challenging part of this, Laura, right now is that we're in the middle of a shift in SIS systems. The system that we're going to use for master scheduling is Power School. And in order to do what you're saying, what we call play in the sandbox with schedules, we're not able to do that until we have the green light on the schedule. Once we have that, we can build it into Power School, then we can begin to play out scenarios.
Okay.
But just the simple fact that we're not really making a huge leap between where we are right now and where this next step in the scheduling process is going, with the exception of really, we're just really pulling the white day out and moving that skinny block to the end of the day. And so it is going to create it's going to loosen up our ability to play with those core courses and schedule them more in a block. And we believe, to give greater access to kids, especially the upperclassmen, to have access to those, not at the end of the day. So we do believe, just based on some of those conversations with the scheduling people, that there'll be some benefit. We still are struggling with other constraints, certainly, as I mentioned a few of them. One of them is the discussion about teams and where teams are. And so, we do have some survey data on that I collected, but that's something that we're taking as a next step on this process.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other comments that we need to address at this point, Adam?
Just Amy.
Oh,
Yes, sorry.
Just
I'm
looking down my
sorry.
notes.
Just
Go ahead, Amy.
one last question. So are you saying that you don't think that this will have an impact on class sizes as of yet? So where if we had, say, 2 really small AP classes, we'd be able to have just one normal size AP class, just as an example? Will this help us at all?
What we're trying to do right now, the part of the scheduling process that we're in right now is we're looking at trying to assign what's the right number of sections given the enrollment requests for courses. So that's going to be a bit of a challenge until we have Power School up and running and looking at exactly how that will play out. We want to run full classes. So basically what we did was we have 3 cuts at this. We have by the numbers, by the rule, if there are fewer than 15, we're not running the class, right? And so we've determined the number of sections necessary, number of FTEs for teachers, and then we have what would be considered in order to make this happen kind of column, because there are courses that we know have to run that will be fewer than 15, right? And we know there are some of those courses that will have to run. So we have that column, and then there's a recommended column. So as we look at, what we have in front of us, a recommended column on the number of sections within the identified FTEs that are budgeted. So that's always our bottom line. We have a number of FTEs it's 2 fewer than this year's set of FTEs by budget. And so can we run the recommended set of sections for the courses that the students are requesting within the FTEs that we have budgeted. So there's really 3 different ways we're looking at this right now as we move forward.
Okay, great. Thanks, everybody. And we're going to skip committee updates for today unless there's a pressing issue. Oh, yes, Bill.
Kelly was going to speak on academic integrity because Adam had asked us to talk a little bit about that, academic integrity in the remote environment.
Yeah, there was a board request about that. So
I'm sorry.
Kelly, please go.
Yeah. Thanks. So I want to give you just a quick update on kind of how things are going from a behavioral perspective in the remote environment. I have to say, when we made this shift, there's a little bit, as the dean of students, there's a little bit of like, how do we approach managing things when we're physically distant from one another. And I've been thrilled at the shift that we've been able to make in the approach of our students. I think it has a lot to do with the phenomenal work of our teachers and how they made that shift. It wasn't trying to recreate the physical classroom and just do it online. I think teachers did a phenomenal job of a fresh start and kind of a reset and what that would look like. What does engagement look like in a remote environment? What does respectful behavior look like on Zoom? And kind of reset their norms and reestablished what class looked like. And I think that was a phenomenal approach that really set the tone. So I've seen very, very few referrals from teachers regarding concerns around online behavior. There was the novelty of Zoom and the backgrounds and everybody changing their backgrounds, which became distracting. We talked about, how that impacts, your peers in class. There were, Zoom bombs where people were getting into class, and Zoom fixed that. We still see a few things, people signing in with, names that are not their own. There's some natural and logical consequences to that. If you sign in and participate in a class and you've signed in as Anne Frank, you don't get the credit for being there that day, and your assignment isn't scored, and you don't get to demonstrate what you know. So that has pretty much taken care of itself, and the teachers have done a phenomenal job of interacting with students and helping them to behave appropriately. I think it's a great learning experience. As this isn't just a skill for today or the next couple of months. This is something that we're going to be navigating for quite some time. So I think it's a great opportunity for kids to learn. As far as academic integrity, I've been made aware of 3 incidents. They really kind of rose to the over collaboration, students submitting work that really maybe reflected a little bit more collaboration with a peer than they should have. Again, teachers wanted to make me aware of it. We kind of worked together on what that approach would be. We had a Zoom meeting with 2 students. It went very, very well. And those are the only two of academic integrity that I've been made aware of. I did meet with Jeannie Sturgis, who created a number of years ago 2 academic integrity seminars to address supporting kids in making good choices and how to represent their own thoughts and ideas and what to do when they struggle with that. One of the seminars is geared towards appropriate citations, how to cite appropriately and what that looks like. And then the other seminar is geared towards how do you accurately represent others' thoughts and ideas and how you form your own thoughts and ideas from that. So that would be, more of a typical plagiarism issue. Jeannie and I met, we shifted some of that curriculum to have an online platform and what that might look like for students if they were struggling, and we haven't needed it, but it's ready to roll if we do. We have had a couple of incidents of disrespectful behavior outside of school hours on non-school related social media platforms. This isn't necessarily the purview of the school, but we have reached out to parents to be a resource in helping. Kids are spending a lot more time engaged online, and so helping parents have resources in making them more savvy as to what each platform looks like and how to engage with students around appropriate behavior. In those 2 specific incidents, we collaborated with parents, had conversations, worked with students, and had positive resolution of both of those incidents. So all in all, less than I see in an in-person environment. And I think that part of, like I said, teachers have done a phenomenal job setting the stage for that work, and their interventions have been natural, logical, in time, and have provided great opportunity for learning. Any questions? I can't hear you, David.
I have a comment. I've been polling friends and kids, my kids and their friends, and all over the country. And the one common thing that they've all said that's a strong part of distance learning, or should be a strong part of distance learning, is interaction with the teacher. Some of the kids that I know, or some of the parents that I know, basically say they get a packet of learning, and every day or a week or whatever, and they're supposed to go through this a bunch of workbook pages and that kind of thing. And those are basically failures. It's the interaction with the teacher over Zoom and other media that has been a significant difference from what I see across a bunch of parents and a bunch of different age groups. So I just want to make that comment. I think we're doing a good job at it, actually.
I couldn't agree more. I think we're doing a phenomenal job of it. And I think it's what's made our approach really unique and enormously successful.
We meet with the teachers once a week, and so we get a good sense of what's going on. Our deans are meeting with teachers more often than that. We've now shifted into being able to have teachers get into department meeting time now with Zoom. So just maintaining that collaboration has been huge. It's a lot of work for teachers, not just meeting with the kids, but then needing to meet with each other on in this environment. But it's so important to them and to each other that we continue that collaborative work together. And there's some really good stuff going on out there, I think, in Amherst right now, especially given the work that our teachers across the district are doing. As you know, we got ahead of this before most schools did, and so we had the luxury of a little bit more prep time. And so while there are certainly bumps along the way on this, we continue to look and monitor very carefully what people are saying around the amount of work kids should be doing, how much time they should spend in the remote world. And so we've been tweaking in concert with the SAU folks. What should that look like, and keeping a very close eye on that, and then working with our teachers to make sure that that's going on.
Good.
All right, I think Pim is having difficulty. So, Amy, are you the vice chair?
Yes,
Okay, so I think you need to
I am.
take over.
Okay, sure. Just let me know if you see him pop back on because I just switched over to the agenda. So are we done with opening items?
I think
Laura,
that
did
was
you
a
have?
question. And Stephanie.
Oh, there are questions? Sorry,
Oh,
I
Stephanie
switched
got
over
it.
to, hang on one sec. I'll put it on gallery view. So Laura, you had a question?
She's got to unmute.
You're on mute.
I'll let Stephanie go first.
Okay, go
Oh.
ahead, Stephanie.
Oh,
I'm
so
back.
I had
Oh, there
I
you
had
are.
a couple. Hi, Pam. I had
Sorry,
a couple
guys, go
people
ahead.
ask questions about the grading that came out that said about second semester courses when they're only a semester course is a pass fail, and they just wanted to understand the logic behind that. Is there any?
Yeah,
I don't know
so,
if this is the right place.
yeah, no, that's, I think it's a good question. One of the things that we're doing obviously is evaluating students' work on the body of work they're providing. Semester courses had just begun. Really, we were about 3 or 4 weeks into a semester course, and not knowing exactly how this is all going to roll out, not knowing exactly how much work each student was going to be able to do, what we were going to focus on. Like right now, we're focusing on essential work within the remaining curriculum. It seemed totally unfair to put a grade on the limited amount of work that had been done in that short period of time. And so with the second semester courses, we made the decision to go to a pass-fail for those courses. Most of our second semester courses, most of them are elective type courses. And so we just felt that was fair to the kids to use that model.
Okay. Thanks.
All right, since I can't see anybody anymore, I will allow Amy and or Adam to call on whoever has their hand up.
Okay, I think Laura was next.
That answered my question. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, Pim, I don't see any other questions.
Okay, so I apologize for having internet issues, and I missed a lot of what Kelly talked about. But in hopes that I can catch up on that later, we'll move on. We do have that 7 o'clock hard stop, so we have about 20 minutes or less to finish up what we need to talk about. Delaney, do you have anything quick on community council?
Bill already covered one proposal that's coming in with the new schedule. And then we will also be discussing a few changes to our bylaws. And then another student is bringing in a proposal that would, if passed, change or allow 18-year-old students to call themselves out for, call themselves out to leave the school and call themselves out for absences, for excused absences, without their parents needing to call them out. But that's all I have.
Okay, great. Thank you, Delaney. Anybody have any quick questions for Delaney? Any hands, Amy? I can't see.
Oh, you're all set.
You're good.
Okay, thanks. All right, let's move on to the consent agenda. So I have a motion to accept the consent agenda.
I'll make a motion.
All right, Amy, a second.
Second.
That was Dave.
Is that Dave? Okay.
Yeah.
Anybody have anything they want to pull before we approve it?
Nobody.
Nobody? Okay.
Oh, wait, hold on. Laura,
oh.
hang on one second.
I had a spelling or two, but I'm going to go to Danae directly.
That's fine.
I don't.
Okay, if it's just typos, yeah, that'd be great if you can just send her those typo corrections. That'd be good. Anybody else have anything regarding content?
You're good.
Okay, great. So we'll do a roll call vote on the approval of the consent agenda. Dave Chen,
And yes,
Steve Coughlin,
Yes.
Amy Facey,
Yes.
Stephanie Grund,
Yes.
Laura Taylor,
Yes.
George Torres,
Yes.
and yes from myself. Okay, that's been approved. Is Michelle available, or Adam, do you have the information on the unassigned fund balance update?
I do, and this was on the agenda prior to our having our March 23rd meeting. So there's really not much update
Okay,
for from just a couple of weeks ago. Besides, we basically have no idea how the COVID-19 thing is going to affect our bottom line. We're still
impact.
working through our bus transportation contracts. That's one of the biggest areas of change. We have been closely tracking all of our expenses that we're going to be giving to the state. And I can tell you that Butler Bus did lay off all of their employees, all of their bus drivers as of sometime in the last couple of weeks. And so they're hoping to rehire them once this is over, but that affects our ability to negotiate with them as well, because we know what their expenses look like right now. So we're working through all of that.
Okay, great. Well, I'm sure by the next meeting, we'll have more information on that and see how that affects that unassigned fund balance as well.
Tim?
All right. Yes.
Tim, Dave has a question.
Yeah, it's
Okay,
kind
go
of
ahead, Dave.
a question to Adam. We have Butler Bus for all the yellow buses in that, but there's also the other company that we use for the transportation to the
Carrying hands.
carrying hands. Is that a similar contract? Because, you know, as I sent you a note a little while ago about the whole idea of getting reimbursement from the CARES thing. Butler Bus and Carrying Hands are private enterprises. They would qualify for CARE or for CARES.
That's right.
But they have to keep on paying their employees until that point in time. And then they get this reimbursement of 6 months of salary or 6 months of payroll or whatever it was.
That's right.
So that I brought that up at the CTE meeting, and David Waters, a senator, took it away, and he said he would look at it, and because it does seem like it could be a big swing. One of the things that could happen is all of these bus companies would go out of business, basically, and they would lose their employees because I don't know if they would lose their employees or not, because there's a lot of reasons why people do the bus and drive a bus, but it's still a situation that it could be a situation where we don't have anybody to go to once it comes back. You don't have to comment on that, actually, Adam. It's just.
Well, I will provide a comment, and that is when a $2 trillion piece of legislation goes through Congress in a week or so, not all of the regulations are worked out that go along with that. And I have a very acute concern about how local school districts will fare, because we get, particularly ours, we're getting federal dollars that are reflective of our Title I money. We don't have a lot of Title I money because we're not we're a wealthy district, a wealthy area, wealthy towns. And so our federal reimbursement is going to be dwarfed by our expenses, where we're required to pay contractors like our bus companies as if they're still delivering service, yet we're not going to be compensated for that in kind. And so that's a big hole for our school system. And that's something that's a concern of ours that we're looking into.
I think the state is looking into it too, Adam. I think there's maybe some help there.
Good.
Pim, I saw Laura and then Stephanie with questions.
Okay.
I'll defer.
Go ahead, Laura. Sorry. Oh,
I'll
you
let
defer? Is that what you
Stephanie-
just said?
I'll let Stephanie start.
Okay, go ahead, Stephanie.
How does it working with food service? I know we're delivering food to any kid who's in the district who's under 18 or under. John mentioned to me that's just a federal reimbursement for all of that, and what does that mean for the food service budget and stuff like that too?
Yeah, John's actually going to be part of our SAU meeting to give an update on that. So if you wouldn't mind holding that off until then.
Okay.
Okay, Laura, did you want to follow anything up?
It was a similar vein of, is there anyone have you done any analysis where someone for the incentive for unemployment would be almost more beneficial for them to receive unemployment? And what about our subs? Do we have any incentive to keep them around that might benefit them so that we don't lose something that's kind of a commodity right now?
Yeah, so we started from the top and worked our way through all the levels of employees that we have. And I have not thought about subs because we're not using subs right now. And they're really ad hoc employees that we use on a semi-regular basis. So we've not thought about subs. We have worked through all of our hourly workers, and there are very few who aren't doing anything. We're tracking on an employee by employee basis what we're paying them, and then also the actual hours they're working in whatever function it is right now. And Michelle is tracking that and is providing that data to the state with the delta between what we're paying folks and the hours they're actually working. And between all of, and she's going to mention this at the SAU meeting, the estimate that we've submitted so far is about a $1.1 million delta. Now, more than half of that is in school bus transportation between Caring Hands and Butler Bus. And so there's $500,000 or $600,000. About 500 of that, I believe, is in wages and benefits for employees that are not covering the hours they're being paid to work. Out of a $50 million budget, that's not a striking amount, but it's real money. And it, again, pales in comparison to the couple $100,000 we're going to get in Title I reimbursement, which, by the way, we're probably going to need those Title I dollars to do something over the summer anyway.
Dave has a question.
Yeah, Pim, the request for the unexpended fund balance and list of projects was really more of a request for the list of projects and what the priorities on those projects would be as they come up. And when Michelle gave the last thing, it was hard to follow because, it was hard to read the list that you put up on the board, and then we didn't get a copy of the list, and I didn't know what was going on there. Anyway, so I'm just asking if we can have a list of the projects and start the idea of at least some of us prioritizing what we think we ought to do, or have Adam participate in that, or John, or whatever. Just getting a list of priority projects so we know what, when the money comes up, we'll have a short window to exercise the cost constraints and all that kind of thing, and then put a contract in with somebody to get it done. And that always happens to the last moment. And what I'm trying to do is just get some idea of what we can do ahead of time on that basis. So,
yeah, I agree. I think we were going to discuss that, and I don't know where we are with the prioritization.
All right.
So Pim, oh, sorry. I was just going to say, also, yeah, I agree. As part of the joint facilities advisory committee, we are starting to go through Souhegan 2.0, and also made the request to have a prioritization of those projects as well, to see if maybe there are some things in there that could be looked at for end of year funds also. So it's happening. The request is being put in there as well. So I think it's the same request.
Yeah, exactly. So Adam, if we can make sure that we get that list of priorities prior to the next meeting, the sooner the better, so we can start to see how they all line up and then really discuss that a little bit in more depth in our next meeting.
Got it.
Thank you. All right. Where are we now? We got 7 minutes left. A few items still on here. We have FY22 budget assumption discussion as it relates to strategic planning, as well as the SAFC discussion, and then policy discussion. We're probably not going to be able to get through all three of those. I suggest that we shoot for one right now that we think we can at least get some decent discussion in before we need to move over into the non-public. And Adam, I'll look at you or listen to you to see which of those three you think would be good for the next few minutes that we have.
Yeah, I think the FY22 budget, only because I can say at this point, there is a huge unknown, which is the crisis we're in, how long it's going to last, and what, if any, impact it would have on our FY22 budget assumption planning. But I would ask the board at this point in the process, believe it or not, we're already making plans for what will happen next March and what will be on the ballot. And so I thought I would run through what I know of the assumptions of this board. And if there's things that I'm missing, you can let me know, but I think I've got a pretty good sense of it. So I'll give it a try. So
sure, go for it.
Thank you. My assumption is that the Joint Facilities Advisory Committee and their work is going to be a high priority for this board in terms of their recommendations for any Souhegan projects, both around capital maintenance that we're going to continue, meaning the warrant article that was on the ballot this past March that was passed. We're going to continue that process of capital maintenance funding in a separate warrant article. Second, whatever the Joint Facilities Advisory Committee recommends, this board will evaluate independently of the Amherst board, but will likely be following that recommendation carefully, considering you've got 2 board members representing you there and you've made a commitment to working with Amherst, but still it's your decision to make. And then everything else we do in the budget is going to be related to enrollment, class size, and our never-ending push to become more efficient with our master schedule. So those 3 things I understand to be our priorities. Are there different priorities I should be made aware of, not in relation to anything else, but besides how they affect budget? Meaning when we show up at deliberative session next February, we want to be saying we're continuing capital maintenance, we're following the Joint Facilities Advisory Committee's recommendations, and our budget is a lean budget based on our master schedule.
I think that pretty well rounds it out. Does anybody have any comments on those or thinks that something may be missing? This is obviously a rough, high level at this point, so let's not worry about getting into the weeds right now. But if anybody has any topics that they think is missed in one of those 3, please speak up or raise your hand, and then Amy can tell me.
Yeah, Dave, and then Stephanie.
Okay, right. Dave, go ahead.
Yeah, so I look at looking into the future. It's kind of hard to do sometimes, but we know we're going to go through a financial crisis in the country. And I would suggest that warrant article money is going to be hard to get, no matter what we do, what we try to say to do. I mean, people are saying we're going to look at unemployment up to 30%, which is well beyond the Depression era unemployment. And it's going to be hard to do that. My suggestion is that we look at first as many things as we possibly can in the unexpended fund balance. If we can get it done in unexpended fund balance, we don't have a problem. We can make that decision ourselves. There is nothing else. The other thing is that when we look at major capital projects, looking at them as any kind of a warrant article is going to be very, very difficult in the future for the next few years. So the only place we're going to find it easily, and I'm not sure we can get it all out of it, the unexpended fund balance, because I don't know what it's going to be, but it's going to be in that unexpended fund balance money. That should be our priority, to figure out where that is going.
Yeah, okay, so Dave, I agree with what you're saying. That's what we're going to figure out once we start to get some priority project schedules or projects rather that we'll discuss next month. So a year from now, we don't know what that unassigned fund balance is, if we even have any. I understand where you're coming from, but I just want to make sure that it sounds like what you're saying is that the 3 topics that Adam just listed out that are the budget assumptions we'll cover that. We just got to figure out how it's going to be covered in the actual budget and or using unassigned funds. Is that correct?
But the unassigned fund balance is spent in July. It's near term.
Yeah, I understand, but it comes from this year, though.
What's that?
That comes from this year, this current fiscal year.
What I'm saying is try to avoid any warrant articles for next year.
I understand.
Okay.
Yeah, I understand.
All right.
Okay, Stephanie? Or was it
Just
Laura? I'm
two,
sorry. I didn't know who. Sorry.
no, it was Stephanie.
Okay.
So just two pieces. One, I want to make sure that we're talking strategic vision. If there's anything in the budget that relates to the strategic vision, we should make sure that we kind of point it out. I think people need to be aware of what's in there rather than guessing. And the other thing, and it just came up when I was looking at CJ's treasurer's report, and I asked her a question. The field maintenance fund hasn't had a deposit in it since last June. And so I asked her about where the fall and yes, the summer and fall money is, but outside of that, it's still only $36,000. And if that's going to come up in the next 5 years or something like that, we got a problem we got to consider. And with like Dave brought up, you know, we're worried about the economy that could really come at us.
Yep, no, totally understand. And we need to start to formulate a strategic plan around handling that as well. So whether or not that's part of the budget is something that we can talk about as we start to formulate that, or you know, what as Dave will remember, what we kind of told the taxpayers is that we're going to try to keep everything out of taxpayer funds in order to not just build the field out, but also accumulate funds to replace as required. So we need to get a reality check based on where we are today to where we need to be and what we can do to get there, if at all possible.
All right, Mr. Chair, if we could go into non-public, that'd be great.
Okay, that's fine. I will take out.
I'm sorry.
Who's that?
I put the schedule design under the opening item, so you'll see it there.
Thanks.
Okay, on the Trello?
Yes.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I'll take a motion to enter non-public.
I'll move to enter non-public.
Is that Steve?
Yes, Steve.
Okay. And one second?
Second.
Stephanie.
You had a few. Dave or
Okay,
Stephanie?
pick one.
I don't know.
Okay. I can't see hands, so.
It was either Dave or Stephanie. They were tied.
All right.
Give it to Dave. Doesn't matter.
There you go, Dave.
Dave. All right, Dave second. Okay, we'll do a roll call. Dave Chen,
Yes.
Steve,
Yes.
Amy,
ACS.
Stephanie,
Yes.
Laura,
Taylor, yes.
George,
Or is yes.
and Gronster, yes.